Chapter 1. The Gift That Meant Everything. Tom McCann ran his weathered fingers along the pristine chrome bumper of his 1967 Mustang Fastback, the morning sun reflecting off its midnight blue paint like liquid metal. At 62, he'd maintained the car with the same devotion most men reserve for their children, which made the irony of his current situation all the more bitter. The garage in his modest suburban home had become a shrine to Mary Ann, his wife of 35 years who'd passed from cancer 2 years ago. Every tool hung in its designated spot. Every surface gleamed with careful attention. But it was the Mustang that held the deepest meaning. "I saved for 3 years to buy you this," Mary Ann had whispered on their 20th wedding anniversary, her eyes sparkling with mischief as she'd led him blindfolded into the garage. "I know you always wanted one, but we could never afford it with Derek's school expenses." The memory hit him like a physical blow. Derek, their only son, now 34 and married to Kelly Davenport. The same Derek who'd grown up hearing stories about his father's teenage dreams of owning a Mustang, who'd helped wash and wax this very car every Sunday for years. Tom's phone buzzed. A text from Derek. "Dad, Kelly's father, Warren, wants to see the Mustang. Can we bring him by today?" Warren Davenport. Tom had met the man exactly 3 times in the 2 years since Derek married Kelly, and each encounter left him with the uncomfortable feeling of being evaluated like livestock at auction. Warren owned a chain of auto dealerships across the tri-state area and possessed the particular brand of arrogance that came with inherited wealth. His late father had built the business. Warren had simply maintained it while developing expensive tastes and a superiority complex. Tom texted back, "Sure. I'll be in the garage." An hour later, Derek's BMW pulled into the driveway. Tom watched through the garage window as his son emerged, tall and lean like Mary Ann, but lacking her warmth. Derek had inherited his mother's auburn hair and quick wit, but somewhere along the way, those gifts had curdled into entitlement and sharp calculation. Warren Davenport stepped out of the passenger seat like a politician greeting constituents, his silver hair perfectly styled, his casual clothes probably costing more than most people's monthly salary. Behind them, Kelly emerged from the back seat, a pretty woman in her early 30s who'd grown quieter with each year of marriage, her once bright personality dimmed by constant criticism from both her husband and father. "Tom," Warren boomed, extending a manicured hand. "Great to see you again. Derek's been telling me about this beauty you've got here." Tom accepted the handshake, noting Warren's grip, firm but trying too hard to dominate. "It's just a car, Warren, though it means a lot to me. Just a car." Warren laughed, circling the Mustang like a shark. "This is a 67 Fastback with a 390 big block. Cherry condition. What do you think, maybe 40,000-50,000 in today's market?" The casual assessment made Tom's jaw tighten. "Like I said, it's not about the money." Derek shifted uncomfortably. "Dad, Warren knows a lot about classic cars. His dealership has a whole vintage department." "I've been thinking," Warren continued, running his hand along the car's flank with proprietary familiarity. "This garage isn't really secure enough for something this valuable. Climate control issues, no proper alarm system. You really should consider storing it somewhere safer." Tom's eyes narrowed. "It's been fine here for over 15 years. Times change," Warren said smoothly. "Insurance requirements, security concerns. I'd hate to see something happen to such a beautiful machine." The conversation continued for another 20 minutes, with Warren offering unsolicited advice about maintenance, storage, and security. Tom answered politely, but felt increasingly like he was being interviewed for the privilege of keeping his own car. After they left, Tom stood alone in the garage, disturbed by the encounter. Warren's interest felt predatory, and Derek's eager agreement with everything Warren said was troubling. His son had always been materialistic, but this felt different, calculated. That evening, Tom called his old friend Chuck Connell, a retired police detective who'd helped him through the dark months after Mary Ann's death. "Chuck, hypothetical question. If someone was planning to steal something valuable, what would they do first?" Chuck's gravelly laugh came through the phone. "Case the target. Learn the routine. Find the weaknesses. Why? Someone giving you trouble?" "Maybe." Warren Davenport came by today to look at the Mustang. The whole thing fell off. Davenport. I know that name. His dealerships have been investigated a few times for insurance fraud, but nothing stuck. Rich family, good lawyers. What's his connection to you? My daughter-in-law's father. Chuck was quiet for a moment. Tom, be careful. Rich guys like that don't usually admire other people's toys without wanting to own them. Chapter 2. The Web Unravels. 3 days after Warren's visit, Derek called with news that made Tom's blood run cold. Dad, we need to talk. Can I come over? Tom was replacing the Mustang spark plugs when Derek arrived, this time alone. His son paced nervously in the garage, avoiding eye contact. What's on your mind? Tom asked, not looking up from the engine. It's about the car, Dad. Warren made Kelly and me an offer we can't refuse. Tom's wrench slipped, scraping his knuckle. What kind of offer? Derek took a deep breath. He wants to buy the Mustang. For $75,000. Cash. It's not for sale. Dad, listen to me. $75,000. Kelly and I could pay off her credit cards, make a down payment on a better house. You could take that cruise you and Mom always talked about. Tom straightened, studying his son's face. Your mother gave me this car, Derek. You know what it means to me. Mom's been gone for 2 years. Derek's voice cracked with frustration. You can't live in the past forever. This is a practical decision. Practical for who? You or Warren? Derek's eyes flashed with anger, an expression that reminded Tom uncomfortably of Warren Davenport. Warren's offering way above market value. He doesn't have to do that. Then why is he? Because he likes the car? Because he wants to help our family. Tom set down his tools and faced his son fully. Derek, that car isn't going anywhere. End of discussion. Actually, Dad, it's not your decision anymore. The words hung in the air like poison gas. Tom felt something cold settle in his stomach. What does that mean? Derek pulled out a folder of papers. Kelly and I had a lawyer look into the car's title. Turns out there's some ambiguity about ownership transfer when Mom died. The car was originally purchased in both your names, but the title work after her death might not have been filed properly. Tom's world tilted. That's impossible. I handled all the paperwork myself. Mistakes happen. Warren's lawyers found some technicalities. The point is, we can contest ownership in court if we have to. But we don't want to do that. We want to work this out as a family. The manipulation was breathtaking in its cruelty. Tom realized this wasn't a spontaneous offer. It was a carefully planned extraction. Warren had somehow discovered a legal vulnerability and was using Derek to exploit it. So, this is how you honor your mother's memory? Tom's voice was deadly quiet. By threatening to steal her gift to me. Nobody's stealing anything. Derek snapped. We're offering you fair compensation for a car you barely drive anymore. I drive it every Sunday. To visit your mother's grave. Derek's face softened for a moment, a flicker of the boy Tom once knew. But it passed quickly, replaced by the cold calculation that had taken root in recent years. Dad, be practical. Take the money. This is bigger than just a car. You're right, Tom said slowly. It is bigger than just a car. It's about who we are as a family. And right now, I'm not sure I recognize my own son. Derek's jaw tightened. Think about it for a few days. But, Dad, this is happening whether you cooperate or not. Warren's already started the legal process. After Derek left, Tom sat in the Mustang's driver's seat, gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles went white. The familiar interior, the smell of aged leather, the smooth curve of the dashboard, felt like Marianne's embrace. But now it was all threatened by his own son's greed and Warren's manipulation. He pulled out his phone and called Chuck Connell. Chuck, I need to know everything you can find about Warren Davenport. Something's not right here. What happened? Tom explained the situation, watching Chuck's expression grow darker with each detail. That son of a bitch, Chuck muttered. This is a classic rich man scam. Find something you want, create a legal problem, then offer to solve it for a fraction of the item's true value. But Derek's my son. He wouldn't. Tom, your son's been bought, either with money or promises. Warren's probably told him this is just the beginning of their partnership. The realization hit Tom like a sledgehammer. This wasn't just about the car. It was about Warren asserting dominance, showing that he could take anything he wanted, even from family. What do I do? Chuck leaned forward, his old cop instincts awakening. We dig. Every rich bastard has skeletons. We find Warrens, and we use them. Chapter 3. The Gathering Storm. Tom spent the next week playing the role of defeated old man, while secretly conducting his own investigation. He let Derek believe the legal pressure was working, agreeing to think about the offer while Chuck Connell worked his contacts in law enforcement and the business community. The breakthrough came on a Tuesday evening. Chuck arrived at Tom's house with a thick folder and a grim expression. Warren Davenport isn't just a rich asshole, Chuck announced, spreading documents across Tom's kitchen table. He's a criminal rich asshole, just a very careful one. The evidence was damning. Warren's dealerships have been systematically defrauding insurance companies for over a decade, staging accidents with vintage cars, inflating damage claims, and selling the totaled vehicles through a network of shell companies. The operation was worth millions and had been flying under the radar because Warren was smart enough to spread the activity across multiple states and jurisdictions. The FBI has been building a case for 2 years, Chuck explained, but they need more evidence. Warren's got good lawyers and better accountants. Tom studied a photograph of Warren standing next to a destroyed 1965 Mustang that looked suspiciously intact. So he's not just stealing my car, he's planning to use it in some kind of fraud. Gets better. Look at this. Chuck pulled out another document. Derek's been working as a consultant for Warren's vintage car division for the past 6 months. Salary, $5,000 a month, plus bonuses. The betrayal cut deeper than Tom had thought possible. His son wasn't just being manipulated. He was an active participant in Warren's scheme. There's more, Chuck continued. Kelly filed for divorce 3 weeks ago. She's been living in a hotel since then, but Derek hasn't told anyone. He's been pretending everything's fine while working with Warren to essentially steal your car and disappear. Tom felt something hard and cold crystallize in his chest. The grief, the anger, the sense of betrayal. It all transformed into something else. Something focused and dangerous. What about the legal challenge to the car's title? Chuck smiled grimly. Complete bullshit. Warren's lawyer filed some paperwork to make it look official, but any competent attorney would tear it apart in 5 minutes. It's pure intimidation. So what's the real play here? Warren wants the car for his fraud scheme. Derek needs money because his marriage is falling apart, and he's probably in debt up to his eyeballs. They figured you'd be an easy mark, grieving widower, isolated, desperate to maintain a relationship with your only child. Tom stood and walked to the window, looking out at the garage where his beloved Mustang waited. They're right about one thing. I am desperate to maintain a relationship with my son, but not the kind they're expecting. What do you mean? Tom turned back to Chuck, and his old friend saw something in his eyes that made him take a step back. It was the look of a man who'd been pushed beyond his breaking point and was ready to push back. I mean, it's time Derek learned that some lessons can only be taught the hard way. And it's time Warren Davenport discovered that stealing from the wrong person can be very, very expensive. Chuck nodded slowly. What do you need me to do? First, I need you to contact your FBI friends. Tell them I might have something that could help their case against Warren. And second, Tom's smile was razor sharp. Second, I need to have a conversation with my son. It's time to give him exactly what he's asking for. The next morning, Tom called Derek and left a message. You win. Come pick up the car on Saturday. Bring Warren. I want to thank him personally for his generous offer. When Derek called back, Tom could hear the excitement in his voice. Dad, you're making the right choice. Warren's going to be so pleased. I'm sure he will, Tom replied. Tell him to bring the paperwork and the cash. I want this done clean and legal. Of course. Dad, I know this seems difficult now, but you'll see. This is the beginning of better things for our family. Tom hung up and looked at the Mustang gleaming in the garage. You're right about that, son, he murmured. Just not in the way you think. He had 3 days to prepare a surprise that Warren Davenport would never forget. And unlike Warren's carefully planned theft, Tom's surprise would be completely legal and infinitely more devastating. Chapter 4. The Setup. Saturday morning arrived with the crisp clarity of autumn, the kind of day that made everything seem sharper and more defined. Tom had been awake since 5, making final preparations for what he privately called the handover. Chuck Connell arrived at 8 with a van full of equipment and a team of 3 people Tom didn't recognize. FBI surveillance specialists. Chuck explained as they began setting up cameras and recording equipment throughout the garage and house. Agent Sylvia Knapp is leading the Warren Davenport investigation. She's very interested in your cooperation. Agent Knapp was a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s with the kind of presence that suggested she'd seen every variety of human corruption and wasn't impressed by any of it. She shook Tom's hand with a firm grip. Mr. McCann, we appreciate your willingness to help. Your son and Warren Davenport have no idea you've contacted us. None. As far as they know, I'm a broken-down old man who's giving up his wife's final gift because I can't fight their legal pressure. Good. We need them to feel completely confident. Overconfidence makes people careless. The surveillance team worked with practiced efficiency, hiding cameras in the garage, the house, and even Tom's neighbor's fence line. By 10 o'clock, the equipment was invisible but comprehensive. What exactly are you expecting to happen? Agent Knapp asked. Tom pulled out a manila envelope from his workbench drawer. Warren thinks he's getting a pristine 1967 Mustang Fastback for $75,000. What he's actually getting is something much more valuable and much more dangerous. He opened the envelope and spread out photographs and documents. Agent Knapp's eyes widened as she realized what she was looking at. These are documentation photos of Warren's fraudulent insurance claims. Tom explained. Chuck helped me identify the pattern. Warren targets specific vintage cars, arranges for them to be stolen or totaled, collects the insurance money, then sells the cars through shell companies. We know about his operation, Agent Knapp said, but we haven't been able to prove the coordination between the thefts and the insurance claims. Tom smiled. That's because you haven't had access to Warren's personal collection. The man's a narcissist. He keeps trophies. Every car he's stolen, every fraud he's committed, he's documented it. Photos, receipts, even videos of the operations. How could you possibly know that? Because 3 months ago, Kelly Davenport hired a private investigator to document Warren's affairs for her divorce from Derek. She thought Warren was hiding assets that should belong to her husband. What she found instead was evidence of a massive criminal enterprise. Chuck pulled out another folder. Kelly reached out to Tom last week through a mutual friend. She's been gathering evidence against both Warren and Derek, and she wants to cooperate with the FBI. Agent Knapp studied the documents. This is extensive, but how does this connect to today's car transfer? Tom walked over to the Mustang and popped the hood. Warren thinks he's stealing my car. What he doesn't know is that I've turned my car into the perfect trap. Hidden beneath the engine block, invisible unless someone knew exactly where to look, was a custom-built GPS tracking device connected to a miniature camera system. Tom had spent 2 weeks installing the equipment with help from Chuck's contacts in the private security industry. Every conversation Warren has in this car, every place he takes it, every person he meets with, it's all going to be recorded and transmitted directly to FBI servers, Tom explained. Warren's pride won't let him resist showing off his new acquisition to his criminal associates. He'll take them for rides, discuss his operations, maybe even show them his collection of stolen cars. Agent Knapp was beginning to smile. And because he thinks you're a helpless old man who's been completely defeated, he won't suspect the car is bugged. Exactly. Warren spent months setting up this elaborate theft, convinced that he's outsmarted everyone involved. His arrogance is his weakness. What about your son? Agent Knapp asked gently. Tom's expression hardened. Derek made his choice when he decided to participate in stealing his dead mother's gift to me. He's going to learn that actions have consequences. Chuck checked his watch. They should be here in about an hour. Tom, you sure you can sell the defeated old man act? Chuck, I've been playing that role for 2 years, ever since Marion died. Everyone sees a grieving widower who's lost his fight. Today, Warren's going to learn the difference between grieving and giving up. Agent Knapp and her team retreated to the surveillance van parked 3 blocks away. Chuck remained in the house, monitoring the hidden cameras from Tom's kitchen. Tom spent the final hour before Derek and Warren's arrival polishing the Mustang one last time, saying goodbye to his wife's memory in the only way that felt appropriate. "I'm sorry, sweetheart," he whispered to the empty garage. But sometimes the only way to honor a gift is to use it as a weapon. At exactly noon, Derek's BMW pulled into the driveway, followed by a gleaming black Mercedes that probably cost more than most people's houses. Tom watched from the garage as Warren emerged from the Mercedes like a conquering general, his smile predatory and triumphant. "Showtime," Tom murmured, and walked out to greet his son and his son's partner in crime. Chapter 5: The Performance. "Dad," Derek called out with forced enthusiasm, striding across the driveway with Warren close behind. "Beautiful day for this, isn't it?" Tom played his part perfectly, shoulders slightly slumped, a tired smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "I suppose it is. Hello, Warren. I appreciate you coming personally." Warren's handshake was firmer than necessary, his grip lingering a moment too long. "Tom, I want you to know how much I appreciate this. Taking care of vintage automobiles is a serious responsibility, and I promise you the Mustang will be in excellent hands." "I'm sure it will." Tom led them into the garage where the Mustang waited, gleaming under the fluorescent lights. "I spent the morning giving her one final detail. Seemed like the right thing to do." Warren circled the car like a prospector examining a gold vein, his eyes bright with avarice. "Magnificent. Absolutely magnificent. Derek, your father has taken exceptional care of this vehicle." Derek nodded, but Tom noticed his son's discomfort with the whole proceeding. For a moment, Tom wondered if Derek was having second thoughts. But then Warren pulled out a leather portfolio filled with cash, and Derek's expression shifted back to greedy anticipation. "$75,000, as agreed," Warren announced, fanning through the bills with obvious satisfaction. "All cash, all legal." Tom accepted the money with hands that trembled slightly, not from nerves, but from the effort of suppressing his rage. "I'll need to see the title transfer documents." "Of course." Warren produced a folder of papers that looked impressively official. Tom pretended to review them carefully while actually checking that all the hidden cameras were capturing Warren's face clearly. "This all looks in order," Tom said finally. "I guess that's it then." "Dad." Derek stepped forward, his voice unexpectedly gentle. "I know this is hard, but Mom would want you to be practical about this." The mention of Marianne nearly broke Tom's composure, but he forced himself to maintain the performance. "Your mother won a lot of things, Derek. Some of them we honored, some we didn't." Warren cleared his throat impatiently. "Well, I think we've covered everything. Derek, do you want to drive the Mustang back to my place? I'd like to show it to my collection manager this afternoon." "Your collection manager?" Tom asked with carefully feigned curiosity. "I maintain a private collection of vintage automobiles," Warren explained with obvious pride. "About 30 vehicles, all in climate-controlled storage. This Mustang will be the crown jewel." Derek looked uncomfortable. "Warren, maybe we should." "Nonsense." Warren waved off Derek's concern. "Tom deserves to know his car will be properly appreciated. I've got a 1966 Shelby GT350, a 1970 Plymouth Cuda, even a 1969 Dodge Charger R/T, all immaculate condition." Tom nodded appreciatively while mentally noting every detail for Agent Knapp's investigation. "That sounds like quite a collection. You must be very proud." "I am indeed. Building it has been the work of a lifetime. Each car has its own story, its own unique path to my garage." The irony was breathtaking. Warren was literally confessing to car theft while standing in Tom's garage, and he was too arrogant to realize it. "Well," Tom said, extending the Mustang's keys to Warren, "she's yours now. Take good care of her." Warren accepted the keys with a triumphant smile. "I promise she'll be treasured." Derek stepped forward and awkwardly embraced his father. "Dad, I know you think I'm being cruel, but this really is for the best. You'll see." Tom hugged his son back, feeling the weight of 34 years of love and disappointment. "You're right, Derek. I will see." Warren started the Mustang's engine, and the familiar rumble filled the garage. For a moment, Tom's resolve wavered. Watching his wife's final gift drive away felt like losing her all over again. But then he remembered Warren's predatory smile and Derek's eager betrayal, and his determination hardened. "Beautiful sound," Warren called over the engine noise. "Derek, follow me to the warehouse." Tom, Thank you again for being so reasonable about this. Tom waved goodbye as both cars backed out of his driveway, Warren behind the wheel of the Mustang, Derek following in his BMW. He watched until they disappeared around the corner, then walked back into his house where Chuck was monitoring the surveillance feeds. "How'd it go?" Chuck asked. "Like clockwork." Warren couldn't resist bragging about his collection, and Derek played the guilty son perfectly. Tom pulled out his phone. Now comes the interesting part. He dialed a number he'd memorized 3 days earlier. After 2 rings, a woman's voice answered. "Kelly? This is Tom McCann. It's done. Warren has the car." Kelly Davenport's voice was tight with nervous energy. "Are you sure the tracking equipment will work? Chuck's people are the best. We'll know everywhere Warren takes that car, and everyone he talks to while he's in it. Tom, I want you to know, I never wanted to go this far. When Derek first told me about Warren's plan, I thought it was just about the money. I didn't realize how deep Warren's criminal activities went until I hired the private investigator. Why didn't you warn me earlier?" Kelly was quiet for a moment. "Because I was afraid. Warren controls everything in Derek's life now. His job, his income, even his self-respect. I thought maybe if Warren got what he wanted, he'd leave our family alone. And now I realize that men like Warren are never satisfied. There's always another target, another victim. If we don't stop him here, he'll just move on to someone else." Tom found himself feeling sympathy for Kelly despite everything. She was trapped in a web of manipulation that Derek had willingly entered, but that she'd been forced into by marriage. "Kelly, after today, Derek's going to face serious criminal charges. Are you prepared for that? I filed for divorce last month. My lawyer says I can protect myself legally if I cooperate with the FBI investigation." "Tom, I know Derek is your son, but he's not the man I'm married anymore. Warren changed him." Tom understood. Warren Davenport had a talent for corrupting everything he touched, turning normal people into accomplices to his greed. "There's something else," Kelly continued. "Warren's planning something big for tonight. He's having a party at his warehouse to show off his collection to some potential buyers. Illegal buyers. Derek mentioned that Warren's trying to sell some of the stolen cars to international collectors." Tom's pulse quickened. "What time?" 8 o'clock. "Tom, these aren't just car enthusiasts, they're criminals. Money launderers, art thieves, people who deal in stolen luxury goods. If the FBI can record tonight's meeting, they'll have everything they need to bring down Warren's entire operation." Tom finished. Chuck looked up from the surveillance monitors. "Tom, we've got movement. Warren just pulled into a warehouse complex about 20 miles north of here. Derek's with him." Tom smiled grimly. "Perfect. Kelly, I need you to call Agent Knapp and give her the details about tonight's party. Tell her we're about to deliver Warren Davenport's entire criminal network on a silver platter." "What about Derek?" Tom was quiet for a long moment, watching the monitor showing Warren and Derek standing next to his beloved Mustang in a warehouse filled with dozens of other vintage cars, all almost certainly stolen. "Derek made his choice," Tom said finally. "Now he gets to live with the consequences." Chapter 6. The Trap Springs. Agent Knapp's voice crackled through Tom's earpiece as he sat in Chuck's surveillance van, watching the feeds from the Mustang's hidden cameras. "We've confirmed at least 15 stolen vehicles in Warren's warehouse, including 2 cars that were reported stolen from museums. This is bigger than we imagined." On the monitor, Warren was giving Derek and 2 other men a tour of his collection, proudly explaining the provenance of each vehicle. The Mustang sat in the center of the warehouse like a trophy, Warren's latest conquest displayed for maximum effect. "He's not even trying to hide it," Chuck muttered, adjusting the audio equipment. "Listen to this." Warren's voice came through clearly. "The Mustang was the trickiest acquisition yet. I had to manipulate the owner's own son into participating. Psychological warfare, gentlemen, sometimes more effective than simple theft." Tom's hands clenched into fists, but his voice remained steady. "Agent Knapp, are you getting all of this?" "Crystal clear. We've got Warren confessing to conspiracy, fraud, and theft all in the same conversation. Your son Derek is also being recorded as an active participant. What about tonight's party? We're setting up surveillance on the warehouse perimeter. Kelly Davenport has provided us with a list of expected attendees, It reads like a who's who of international art and vehicle theft. If we can record Warren negotiating sales with these buyers, we'll have grounds to prosecute not just him, but his entire network. Tom watched as Derek laughed at something Warren said, his son apparently fully comfortable in his new role as criminal accomplice. The betrayal still stung, but Tom found his grief transforming into something colder and more focused. Chuck, what's the status on Kelly's evidence? She delivered 3 boxes of documents to the FBI this morning. Financial records, correspondence, even audio recordings she made of Warren discussing his operations. Turns out Warren trusted Derek enough to include Kelly in some planning meetings. Any indication that Derek knew about the other criminal activities beyond the car thefts? Agent Knapp's voice was grim. Derek has been helping Warren research targets for 6 months. He's not some naive kid who got in over his head. He's a full partner in the operation. Tom absorbed this information, feeling the last of his paternal sympathy evaporate. Derek wasn't just stealing his father's car. He was actively participating in a criminal enterprise that had victimized dozens of people. The warehouse cameras showed Warren opening the Mustang's hood to show off the engine to his visitors. Tom held his breath, but Warren's inspection was superficial. The hidden surveillance equipment remained undetected. Tom, Agent Knapp said, we need to discuss what happens after tonight. Once we move to arrest Warren and his associates, Derek is going to be taken into custody as well. Are you prepared for that? Tom looked at the monitor showing his son laughing with criminals and thieves, standing next to the car that represented his dead wife's love and sacrifice. Agent Knapp, my son stopped being my son the moment he decided to steal his mother's final gift to me. Whatever happens to him now, he's earned. Understood. We'll coordinate the arrest for maximum impact. Warren's party starts in 3 hours. Chuck pointed to another monitor. Tom, look at this. Warren's bringing the Mustang to his house first. Probably wants to show it off to his wife before the party. Tom watched as Warren drove his beloved Mustang out of the warehouse, heading toward the exclusive neighborhood where the Davenport family lived. The irony wasn't lost on him. Warren was literally driving the evidence of his own crimes to a gathering of international criminals. Agent Knapp, how many agents do you have in position? 12 at the warehouse, 6 at Warren's house, and a full tactical team standing by. We've also coordinated with international law enforcement. Several of tonight's expected attendees are wanted in multiple countries. Tom's phone buzzed with a text from Derek. Dad, Warren loves the car. He's so grateful. This is the beginning of great things for our family. Tom showed the message to Chuck, who shook his head in disgust. Kid has no idea what's about to hit him. Maybe that's for the best, Tom replied. If Derek understood the magnitude of what he's done, he might try to run. The surveillance feeds showed Warren pulling into his circular driveway, the Mustang gleaming in the afternoon sun. Warren's wife, Annette Craig, a thin, nervous woman who always seemed to be apologizing for her husband's behavior, came out to admire the car. It's beautiful, Warren. Annette's voice came through the audio feed. But isn't it expensive to keep buying these cars? Don't worry about the money, dear, Warren replied dismissively. This particular acquisition was practically free. Sometimes people can be convinced to part with their most precious possessions for far less than they're worth. Tom felt a cold satisfaction at Warren's words. The man's arrogance was providing the FBI with a complete confession, recorded in high definition and transmitted in real time to federal servers. Agent Knapp, Tom said, Warren just confessed to defrauding me. That should be enough for theft charges even without tonight's party. We want a whole network, Tom. Warren's small time compared to some of the people who will be at tonight's gathering. We're talking about criminals who've stolen hundreds of millions of dollars in art, jewelry, and collectible vehicles over the past decade. Chuck adjusted the camera angle to get a better view of Warren's garage, where several other vintage cars were visible. Tom, I count at least 6 more stolen vehicles just in Warren's personal collection. This guy's been running his operation for years. Which means dozens of families like mine have been victimized, Tom replied. People who've lost irreplaceable heirlooms and family treasures. The afternoon wore on as Warren prepared for his party, making phone calls to confirm attendees and discussing security arrangements. Each conversation provided more evidence of the scope of his criminal operations. At 6 o'clock, Derek arrived at Warren's house, now dressed in an expensive suit that Tom didn't recognize. Father and son watched as Derek helped Warren move the Mustang to a prominent position in the warehouse, ready to be displayed to the evening's criminal clientele. "Last chance to change your mind about Derek," Chuck said quietly. Tom watched his son laughing with Warren, completely at ease in his new life as a criminal. "Chuck, the Derek I raised would never have participated in stealing from his own father. That Derek died sometime in the past year. The man I'm looking at now is a stranger who happens to share my DNA." Agent Knapp's voice came through the earpiece. "All units, this is Control. Party guests are beginning to arrive. We're recording everything, but remember, we need them to actually negotiate illegal sales before we can make arrests. Stay sharp and stay hidden." Tom settled back in his chair, watching the monitors as the trap he'd spent weeks setting finally began to spring closed. Warren Davenport thought he'd stolen a car. What he'd actually done was steal a guided missile aimed directly at the heart of his criminal empire. "Time to see how smart you really are, Warren," Tom murmured. Chapter 7. The Gathering. By 8 o'clock, Warren's warehouse had transformed into something resembling a high-end auto show, if auto shows were attended exclusively by international criminals. Tom counted at least 20 expensive cars in the parking area outside the warehouse, their occupants dressed in expensive suits and carrying themselves with the particular confidence that comes from never fearing legal consequences. Agent Knapp's voice was tense through the earpiece. "We've identified 14 individuals with outstanding international warrants. 2 are on Interpol's most wanted list for art theft. This is the biggest gathering of high-end criminals we've seen in North America in the past 5 years." Through the Mustang's hidden cameras, Tom watched Warren play the role of gracious host, leading groups of visitors around his collection while Derek followed like an eager apprentice. The irony was perfect. Warren was literally giving tours of stolen property to other thieves, all of it being recorded by federal agents. "Look at this beauty," Warren said, gesturing toward a pristine 1963 Ferrari 250 GTO, acquired from a private collector in Switzerland who thought his insurance was adequate. "The documentation is flawless. My people are artists when it comes to paperwork." A heavily accented voice, probably European, responded, "The buyers in Dubai are very interested in Ferrari. What is your asking price?" $2 million, which is quite reasonable considering the car is officially non-existent according to insurance records. Chuck leaned toward Tom. "Did you hear that? Warren just confessed to insurance fraud and international vehicle trafficking in the same sentence." Tom nodded, his attention focused on Derek, who was standing near the Mustang and looking increasingly uncomfortable. His son's body language suggested he was finally beginning to understand the true scope of Warren's operation. The evening proceeded like a carefully choreographed criminal convention. Warren introduced his guests to each other, facilitating connections between stolen car dealers, art thieves, and money launderers. Every conversation was a confession, every handshake a conspiracy. "The American market is particularly rich in opportunities," Warren told a group gathered around a stolen Lamborghini. "Americans are sentimental about their possessions, which makes them easy to manipulate. Take this Mustang, for example." He gestured toward Tom's car. "The previous owner was so attached to it that he thought it was priceless. I acquired it for $75,000 and a few legal threats." Tom's jaw clenched as Warren's guests laughed at his expense, but he forced himself to remain focused on the bigger picture. Every word Warren spoke was digging his grave deeper. Agent Knapp's voice crackled through the earpiece. "Tom, we're getting pure gold here. Warren's providing details about criminal operations across 3 continents. This is going to take down networks we've been tracking for years. What about Derek? Your son is currently standing next to a stolen Aston Martin while Warren explains how they forge ownership documents. Legally, he's as culpable as Warren for every crime being discussed tonight." Tom watched his son on the monitor, Derek's face pale, but his posture resigned. There was no shock or surprise in Derek's expression. He knew exactly what he'd gotten himself into. Around 9:30, the real business began. Warren led a smaller group of the most serious buyers to a separate area of the warehouse where the highest value vehicles were stored. The Mustang's cameras captured everything as Warren began negotiating actual sales. The Picasso's buyer fell through. A woman with a French accent was saying, "But I have 3 clients interested in vintage American muscle cars." The Middle Eastern market is particularly strong right now. Warren nodded enthusiastically. "I can provide a dozen vehicles within the next 6 months, all with clean documentation, all untraceable to their original owners." "What about law enforcement risks?" Warren laughed. "American police are focused on terrorism and drugs. They don't have the resources to track sophisticated vehicle theft operations, especially when we're targeting private collectors rather than dealerships." Derek stepped forward. Our research indicates that law enforcement response to vintage car theft is minimal unless the vehicles are worth more than $500,000. Tom felt sick listening to his son casually discuss criminal strategy, but Agent Knapp's voice in his earpiece was triumphant. "That's it. Derek just admitted to actively researching law enforcement vulnerabilities for Warren's operation. We have everything we need." The negotiations continued for another hour, with Warren selling 3 vehicles and taking orders for 6 more. Prices range from $200,000 to $1.8 million per car, all paid through offshore accounts and shell companies. "Ladies and gentlemen," Warren announced around 11 o'clock, "I think this has been a most successful evening. As always, discretion is paramount. What happens in this warehouse stays in this warehouse." Tom almost laughed at the irony. Warren's obsession with secrecy had led him to confess his crimes in exquisite detail to federal recording equipment. "All units, prepare for coordinated arrest," Agent Knapp's voice commanded. "We move in 5 minutes. Tom, you might want to stop watching the monitors. This is going to get chaotic quickly." Tom kept watching anyway. He'd waited too long for this moment to miss Warren Davenport's downfall. At exactly 11:15, the warehouse erupted in light and sound as FBI tactical teams stormed through every entrance simultaneously. The hidden cameras in the Mustang provided a perfect view as dozens of armed agents swarmed the warehouse, shouting commands and drawing weapons. Warren's face went through a remarkable transformation, from confident host to confused victim to terrified criminal in the span of about 3 seconds. He spun around wildly, looking for an escape route that didn't exist. Derek's reaction was different. Tom's son simply raised his hands above his head and sank to his knees, his expression resigned. Derek had known this moment would come eventually. "FBI, everyone on the ground. Now!" Warren tried to run, but there was nowhere to go. Within 30 seconds, he was face down on the concrete floor with zip tie restraints cutting into his wrists. His expensive suit was ruined, his carefully styled hair disheveled, his dignity destroyed. Derek was arrested more gently, probably because he'd surrendered immediately, but the result was the same. Tom watched federal agents lead his son away in handcuffs, feeling a complex mixture of justice and grief. Agent Knapp's voice came through the earpiece. "Tom, it's over. 23 arrests, millions of dollars in stolen property recovered, and enough evidence to prosecute criminal networks in 12 countries. Your Mustang just helped us pull off one of the biggest international crime busts in FBI history." Tom continued staring at the monitors, watching agents catalog Warren's collection of stolen vehicles. His Mustang sat in the middle of it all, Marianne's final gift transformed into an instrument of justice. "Agent Knapp," he said finally, "when can I get my car back?" "After it's processed as evidence. Probably 6 to 8 weeks. But Tom, after what that car has done tonight, I think you should consider donating it to the FBI Training Academy. It's earned a place in law enforcement history." Tom smiled for the first time in weeks. "I'll think about it. But first, I want to take my wife for one more drive." Chapter 8. Reckonings. 2 weeks after the warehouse raid, Tom sat in a sterile conference room at the FBI field office, watching Warren Davenport's attorney attempt to negotiate a plea deal. Through the one-way glass, Warren looked like a different man. His expensive clothes replaced by an orange jumpsuit, his arrogant confidence replaced by the desperate look of someone who'd finally realized the magnitude of his situation. Agent Knapp sat beside Tom, a thick folder of evidence on the table between them. 23 federal charges, including conspiracy, wire fraud, money laundering, and interstate transportation of stolen property. Warren's looking at 40 to 60 years in federal prison. What about international charges? Interpol has requested extradition for crimes in 7 countries. Even if Warren somehow beats the federal charges, which he won't, he'll spend the rest of his life in foreign prisons. Tom nodded, feeling a cold satisfaction. And Derek? Agent Knapp's expression softened slightly. Your son's situation is more complicated. He's cooperating fully with our investigation, providing details about Warren's operations that we never could have discovered otherwise. His attorney is arguing that Derek was manipulated by Warren, that he didn't understand the full scope of the criminal enterprise. Do you believe that? Honestly, Derek knew exactly what he was doing. The evidence from your car's recordings shows him actively participating in criminal planning, researching law enforcement vulnerabilities, and helping Warren identify targets. But Agent Knapp paused. Derek's cooperation is saving us years of investigation. Without his testimony, some of Warren's associates might have escaped prosecution. Tom stared through the glass at Warren, remembering the man's arrogant smile when he'd stolen the Mustang. What kind of deal is Derek being offered? 12 to 15 years, with possibility of parole in 8 if he continues cooperating. It's harsh, but considering the scope of the crimes, it's more than fair. Tom finished. Derek's an adult who made adult choices. He needs to face adult consequences. Agent Knapp studied Tom's profile. Most fathers would be trying to get their son a lighter sentence. Most fathers don't have sons who steal their dead wife's final gift. Tom's voice was steady, without emotion. Derek stopped being my son the moment he walked into this criminal enterprise. What happens to him now is a matter of justice, not family. A knock on the door interrupted them. Agent Knapp opened it to admit Kelly Davenport, looking exhausted but determined. She'd been cooperating with the FBI investigation since the arrests, providing crucial evidence about Warren's financial operations. Tom, Kelly said, taking a seat across from him, I wanted to thank you for what you did, and to apologize for Derek's part in it. You don't need to apologize for Derek's choices, Kelly. You were as much a victim as I was. I don't feel like a victim. I feel like an accomplice. Kelly's voice was thick with guilt. I knew something was wrong with Warren's business, but I was too afraid to ask questions. And I knew Derek was changing, becoming more like Warren every day, but I told myself it was just stress from work. Agent Knapp placed a comforting hand on Kelly's shoulder. Kelly, your cooperation is helping us recover millions of dollars in stolen property and return it to the rightful owners. You're making this right. What about Warren's wife? Tom asked. Annette Craig filed for divorce the day after Warren's arrest, Kelly replied. She's claiming she knew nothing about his criminal activities, and honestly, I believe her. Warren kept her isolated from the business side of his life. Tom nodded. He'd seen enough of Warren's interactions with his wife to know the man treated her like expensive decoration rather than a partner. There's something else, Kelly continued. Derek wants to see you. He's been asking about you every day since the arrests. Tom's first instinct was to refuse, but something in Kelly's expression made him reconsider. What does he want? I think he wants to apologize. To explain. To try to make you understand why he did what he did. I already understand, Tom said flatly. Derek wanted money more than he wanted integrity. Warren offered him both money and the illusion of importance, and Derek chose that over his own family. Tom, Agent Knapp interjected gently, seeing Derek might give you some closure, and it might help him come to terms with what he's done. Tom considered this for a long moment, watching Warren through the glass as the man's attorney whispered urgently in his ear. Where is Derek being held? Federal detention center downtown. He's being kept separate from Warren and the other defendants for his own safety. His own safety? Kelly's expression darkened. Some of Warren's associates have put out word that they considered Derek a liability. The people Warren was dealing with don't forgive betrayal, even involuntary betrayal. Tom felt an unexpected flicker of paternal concern, quickly suppressed. Derek had chosen his associates. Now he'd have to live with the consequences of that choice. I'll see him, Tom decided, but not to forgive him. I want Derek to understand exactly what he's lost and exactly why he's lost it. Agent Knapp nodded. I'll arrange a meeting for tomorrow afternoon. Tom, one more thing. We've recovered your Mustang from the evidence warehouse. It's ready for you to pick up whenever you're ready. Tom smiled for the first time since entering the building. Tomorrow after I see Derek, I want to drive my wife's car home and remember what it feels like to have something that can't be stolen or corrupted. Through the glass, Warren's plea negotiations appeared to be breaking down. His attorney was shaking his head while Warren gestured angrily. Tom watched with detached interest as the man who tried to steal his most precious possession learned that some consequences couldn't be negotiated away. Agent Knapp, Tom said, when Warren's trial starts, I want to be there. I want him to see the man he thought he'd defeated sitting in the gallery, watching him pay for his crimes. That could be arranged. The trial should start in about 6 months. Tom stood and gathered his jacket. Good. Warren Davenport spent months planning to steal from me. I wanted to spend years remembering what that theft cost him. As Tom left the FBI building, he felt lighter than he had in weeks. Justice wasn't complete yet, but it was finally in motion. And tomorrow, he'd have his wife's gift back where it belonged. In his garage, protected by a man who understood the difference between ownership and stewardship. Warren Davenport had learned too late that some things couldn't be stolen, only borrowed temporarily. Now it was time for him to pay the interest on that loan. Chapter 9. Resolution. The federal detention center smelled like disinfectant and defeat. Tom sat across from his son in a small visiting room, separated by bulletproof glass and connected by phones that carried more than just voices. They carried the weight of 34 years of relationship, now shattered beyond repair. Derek looked older than his 34 years, his face gaunt and his eyes haunted. The expensive clothes Warren had bought him were gone, replaced by the orange jumpsuit of the incarcerated. When he picked up the phone, his hand trembled slightly. Dad, Derek's voice cracked through the speaker. Thank you for coming. Tom studied his son's face, looking for traces of the boy he'd raised, the child who'd helped him wash the Mustang every Sunday. Kelly said you wanted to apologize. I do. Dad, I need you to know, I never meant for it to go this far. When Warren first approached me about the car, I thought it was just business. A simple transaction that would help our family financially. Tom's expression remained neutral. When did you realize it wasn't simple? Derek looked down at his hands. Honestly, I think I knew from the beginning. Warren doesn't do anything simple. But I told myself that if I could just get through this one deal, make enough money to solve our problems, then I could walk away clean. Our problems. Kelly and I, we were drowning, Dad. Credit card debt, mortgage payments, medical bills from Kelly's surgery last year. Warren offered me a way out, and I was desperate enough to take it. Tom leaned forward slightly. Derek, I had money. Your mother left a substantial life insurance policy. If you needed help, all you had to do was ask. Derek's face crumbled. I couldn't ask you for help after spending years criticizing how you lived. After telling you that you needed to move on from Mom, that keeping the car was just dwelling in the past. How could I admit that my modern, practical approach to life had left us bankrupt? For the first time since Derek's arrest, Tom felt a flicker of understanding. Pride had been Derek's downfall, the same pride that had made him vulnerable to Warren's manipulation. So you decided to steal from me instead. I convinced myself it wasn't stealing. Warren showed me the legal documents, explained how the title transfer after Mom's death might not have been properly executed. I thought maybe there was a legitimate question about ownership. Derek, you knew those documents were fraudulent. You helped Warren research the legal vulnerabilities. Derek nodded, tears now flowing freely. I knew. By the time I realized how deep Warren's criminal operation went, I was already so far in that I couldn't see a way out. Warren made it clear that if I tried to back out, he'd destroy Kelly's career and make sure I never worked in finance again. Tom felt no sympathy for Derek's predicament. So you chose to destroy our family instead. Dad, I thought I could control the situation. I thought I could get Warren what he wanted, take the money, and get our lives back on track. I never imagined the FBI was involved or that Warren was connected to international criminals. Derek, what did you think happened to all those other vintage cars in Warren's warehouse? Did you think they were donated by generous collectors? Derek was quiet for a long moment. I didn't want to think about it. I just focused on our situation, our needs. I told myself that as long as I wasn't directly involved in stealing other people's cars, I could justify taking yours. Tom leaned back in his chair, studying his son's face. Derek's remorse seemed genuine, but it was the remorse of someone who'd been caught, not someone who'd independently recognized the wrongness of his actions. Derek, do you understand what you've lost? My freedom, my career, my marriage, probably. No, Tom said quietly. You've lost your integrity. Everything else can be rebuilt, but integrity, once it's gone forever. Your mother understood that. It's why she worked 3 jobs to save money for the Mustang instead of borrowing or compromising her principles. Derek sobbed openly now. Dad, I know I've destroyed our relationship. I know you can never forgive me. But I need you to know that I loved Mom, and I loved you, and I love that car. Warren made me believe that keeping it was selfish, that selling it was the mature, practical thing to do. Warren didn't make you believe anything, Derek. He told you what you wanted to hear because it justified what you wanted to do. The car was never the real issue. It was always about your resentment that I had something you couldn't control or monetize. Derek looked up sharply. That's not true, isn't it? You spent the past 2 years telling me I needed to move on from your mother, to stop living in the past, to be more practical about money. The Mustang represented everything you disapproved of about my life. Sentiment over practicality, emotion over profit, memory over progress. Derek opened his mouth to protest, then closed it, recognizing the truth in Tom's words. Tom stood to leave. Derek, I hope you use your time in prison to figure out who you want to be when you get out. But understand this, I'm not waiting for you. I'm not holding your place in my life or hoping for reconciliation. You stopped being my son when you chose Warren Davenport over your own family. Dad, please. Goodbye, Derek. Tom hung up the phone and walked away, leaving Derek sobbing behind the bulletproof glass. In the parking lot, he called Agent Knapp. I'm ready to pick up my car. An hour later, Tom stood in the FBI evidence warehouse, looking at his Mustang gleaming under the fluorescent lights. Agent Knapp handed him the keys with a smile. Tom, that car is officially a legend here. The equipment we installed worked flawlessly. We got over 40 hours of crystal-clear recordings of Warren's criminal activities. 3 other FBI field offices want to borrow our surveillance techniques for their own operations. Tom walked around the car, checking for any damage from its time as evidence. It looked exactly as it had the morning Warren stole it, pristine and perfect. Any word on the other stolen vehicles? We're returning them to their owners as fast as we can verify ownership. So far, we've reunited 37 families with cars they thought were gone forever. Your operation didn't just get Warren. It brought closure to dozens of other victims. Tom smiled, thinking of other families getting their treasures back. What about Warren's trial? Jury selection starts next month. Warren's attorney is trying to negotiate another plea deal, but the prosecution isn't interested. We want a public trial to send a message to other criminals that this kind of operation won't be tolerated. Tom climbed into the Mustang and started the engine, feeling the familiar rumble of the 390 big block. For the first time in months, the car felt like home again. Agent Knapp, if you ever need this car for training purposes or demonstrations, you know how to reach me. Tom, are you sure you want to keep it? After everything it's been through? Tom thought about this for a moment. His hands on the steering wheel Marianne had gripped when she'd surprised him with this gift so many years ago. This car has been stolen, bugged, used as evidence in a federal investigation, and instrumental in bringing down an international criminal network, he said finally. But most importantly, it's still my wife's gift to me. A little adventure doesn't change what it means. Tom drove out of the FBI warehouse and onto the highway, headed home. In the rearview mirror, he could see Agent Knapp waving goodbye. Ahead of him lay the rest of his life. A life without Derek, but with the integrity and memories that Derek had tried to steal. As he pulled into his driveway, Tom realized that Warren Davenport had inadvertently given him a gift as valuable as the Mustang itself. The man's greed and cruelty had forced Tom to discover reserves of strength and determination he hadn't known he possessed. Warren had tried to reduce Tom to a helpless victim, but but instead had awakened a man capable of complex revenge and perfect justice. Tom parked the Mustang in its proper place in the garage and sat for a moment in the driver's seat, remembering Mary Ann's smile when she'd first shown him the car. "We got them, sweetheart," he said quietly to the empty garage. "All of them." Tomorrow was Sunday. Tom would wash and wax the Mustang, just as he had every Sunday for 15 years. Then he'd drive to Mary Ann's grave and tell her about Derek's choices and Warren's downfall and the justice that had finally been served. Some gifts, Tom had learned, were worth fighting for. And some fights, when waged with intelligence and patience, could be won completely. Warren Davenport had thought he was stealing a car. Instead, he'd stolen a weapon that had destroyed him and his entire criminal empire. That was a lesson worth remembering, and Tom planned to remember it every time he turned the key in his wife's perfect, deadly gift. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there.